The sun casts a radiant glow on Jefferson Avenue, the main artery of a bustling city precinct. Cars trickle through the intersection, their metallic surfaces shimmering under the afternoon light. Pedestrians weave past one another, their faces painted with the mundane expressions of daily life. Amid this amalgamation of ordinary scenes, a moment brews, unseen by all, that will soon ripple far beyond the precinct's borders. A black SUV rolls to a stop at a red light. Inside the vehicle sits General Olivia Turner, a woman whose decorated military career has etched her name into the annals of history. Her presence is commanding, even in silence. The dark uniform adorned with insignias of rank and honor speaks volumes about her life of service. But nothing about her demeanor suggests arrogance. There is only calm and composure. She's on her way to meet an advisory committee downtown when the flash of red and blue disrupts her journey. The cruiser pulls up behind her, lights blazing, siren cutting through the air. Olivia glances into her rearview mirror and sees the officer gesturing for her to pull over. Confused but compliant, she eases the SUV to the side of the road. The engine hums quietly as she gathers her thoughts. What could this possibly be about? A routine traffic stop, perhaps? She hadn't been speeding, her vehicle registration was up to date, and her license was in perfect order. She takes a deep breath and rolls down her window. The officer approaches her car with an exaggerated swagger, his aviator sunglasses reflecting a distorted view of her calm face. He taps on the window frame with a pen, his expression shadowed with what seems like irritation, or perhaps something deeper and more insidious. His badge reads Officer Shelton, and his posture radiates an unsettling mix of authority and tension. "License and registration," he commands, not bothering with a greeting. His tone is clipped, almost mechanical, as though he's reciting lines from a well-rehearsed script. Olivia complies without hesitation, handing over the requested documents. Her voice is steady and formal as she speaks. "Good afternoon, officer. May I ask what the issue is?" Officer Shelton doesn't immediately answer. His eyes scan her license and registration, his lips pressed thinly together. There's a flicker of recognition when he notices her title, but it's quickly stifled by something colder, more calculated. "Step out of the vehicle," he orders abruptly. A chill slices through the warm air. Olivia raises an eyebrow, taken aback by the sudden escalation. "Is there a specific reason for this request, officer? I'd like to understand what's happening here." Her question, poised but firm, seems to rattle Shelton. His jaw tightens as he repeats, "Step out of the vehicle. Now!" The tension thickens. Pedestrians slow their strides, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding scene. Olivia inhales deeply, her training kicking in. She knows better than to argue in a situation brimming with potential volatility. She unbuckles her seatbelt and steps out, her polished boots landing on the pavement with a muted thud. Standing at full height, Olivia commands presence, but it's not just her stature, it's the unshakable dignity in her gaze. She meets Shelton's eyes squarely, unflinching. The crowd grows, a mix of murmurs weaving through the bystanders. They don't know who she is, not yet. To them, she's just another black woman being subjected to an all-too-familiar routine. Shelton gestures to the side of the SUV. "Put your hands on the hood." The request is drenched in an undercurrent of humiliation, but Olivia obliges without protest. The situation escalates further as Shelton begins a cursory search, his actions brusque and dismissive. Olivia clenches her jaw but remains silent. She knows this is about more than a traffic stop, it's a test of her resolve, a confrontation of principles. "What's the problem, officer?" she asks again, her voice unwavering. Shelton sneers, the mask slipping just enough to reveal a glimmer of disdain. "You people always think you can talk your way out of anything." The words hang in the air like a poisonous cloud. The bystanders shift uncomfortably, some pulling out their phones to record the incident. Olivia's heart pounds, not from fear but from the simmering rage she buries beneath layers of discipline and control. She straightens, her hand still on the hood, and speaks with deliberate clarity. "I am General Olivia Turner, United States Army. I've dedicated my life to serving this country. If you believe for 1 second that I will tolerate being treated with anything less than respect, you are gravely mistaken." The declaration lands like a thunderclap, silencing the murmurs of the crowd. Shelton falters, his confidence shaken by the gravity of her words. But instead of backing down, he doubles down, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "You're under arrest for obstruction and resisting authority," he announces. The crowd gasps. A few voices call out in protest, their initial reluctance giving way to outrage. Olivia doesn't resist as the cold metal encircles her wrists, but her eyes maintain their steely focus on Shelton. "This will not end the way you think it will," she states, her tone a mix of warning and promise. With her hands cuffed behind her back, Olivia is led to the police cruiser. The scene is surreal, a juxtaposition of power and frailty, dignity and degradation. As she's placed in the back seat, she makes a silent vow. This moment will not define her, but it will serve as a catalyst. Her voice will be heard. From the confines of the cruiser, Olivia composes herself. She has one call to make, and she knows exactly who to reach out to. Her phone, retrieved from her purse at her insistence, is handed to her begrudgingly. With measured precision, she dials a number memorized long ago. "This is General Turner," she says when the line connects. Her voice is calm but carries an unmistakable edge. "I need immediate assistance. Patch me through to the Pentagon." The officer driving flinches slightly at the mention of the Pentagon, casting a wary glance at Olivia through the rearview mirror. Shelton, seated in the passenger seat, shifts uncomfortably. He leans toward the driver, whispering something inaudible. Fear begins to creep into his previously unshakable posture. Moments later, Olivia is connected to a high-ranking official. She recounts the events with the precision of a military report, her tone measured but unyielding. She doesn't embellish, nor does she downplay. The truth, stark and unadorned, is enough. As the call ends, a sense of anticipation fills the air. Olivia sits back, her gaze fixed out the window as the cruiser speeds toward the precinct. She knows the wheels of justice turn slowly, but once set in motion, they are unstoppable. The precinct comes into view, its facade unremarkable yet imposing. Olivia is led inside, her presence causing a ripple of whispers among the officers and detainees. Shelton's grip on her arm tightens slightly, a futile attempt to assert control. But she is unshaken. Suddenly, the phone at the reception desk rings. The officer answers, his expression shifting rapidly from confusion to alarm. He looks up at Shelton, then at Olivia, before replacing the receiver and walking briskly toward the captain's office. Within minutes, the captain appears, his face a mix of irritation and concern. "Shelton, a word, now." As the two retreat into the office, Olivia is left standing in the middle of the precinct. The room has fallen eerily quiet. The gravity of the situation begins to settle over everyone present. The bystanders in the waiting area stare with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, their earlier indifference now replaced by keen interest. The door to the captain's office swings open abruptly. Shelton emerges, his face pale, the arrogance drained from his features. The handcuffs are removed, and Olivia is issued a strained apology, but she doesn't dignify it with a response. Instead, she turns to the captain. "I trust that an internal review will be conducted," she says, her tone leaving no room for argument. The captain nods, his gaze avoiding hers. Without another word, Olivia walks out of the precinct, her head held high. The late afternoon sun greets her like an old friend as she steps onto the sidewalk. The crowd outside has grown. News travels fast. Cameras flash, reporters shout questions, but she doesn't pause. She's already thinking about her next move. This isn't over, not by a long shot. As she climbs back into her SUV, a thought crosses her mind. This could happen to anyone. It's not enough to hold one officer accountable. The system must change. She starts the engine, her resolve solidified. The next chapter in this battle will be fought not just for herself, but for every voice silenced by ignorance and every life disrupted by injustice. For everyone watching from afar, this marks a beginning. For Olivia Turner, it's simply another mission, a fight she's uniquely qualified to lead. And then, just as the SUV pulls away, her phone buzzes. A name appears on the screen, one she hadn't expected to see. She answers, her pulse quickening as the voice on the other end delivers a message that will change everything yet again. To be continued. Recap. General Olivia Turner faces racial bias in a routine traffic stop, leading to her arrest. Despite the humiliation, she leverages her position, escalating the situation directly to the Pentagon. Her resolve remains unbroken as she prepares for the battles ahead, while an unexpected call sets the stage for new developments. The black SUV sits outside an unassuming suburban house from which muted disputes drift through sealed windows and into the cool evening air. General Olivia Turner, still cloaked in the disciplined aura of her military career, steps out of the vehicle. Her boots strike the pavement with sharp precision as she approaches the door, fortified against unsettled disputes. Her presence alone, carries a gravity that seems to press against the weight of the unfolding tension. Though back in civilian clothes, Olivia is anything but ordinary. She answers the knock on a weathered wooden door that belongs to Colonel Victor Ramirez, a former confidant turned bureaucratic recluse. Once a sharper edge in the Pentagon machine, Ramirez has grown as weary clockwork, barely keeping its dial. The conversation threads nearby reveal lives utterly encroaching as vital pipelines with enormous winged heavyweights. The air hangs heavy inside the Pentagon briefing room as Olivia Turner steps through its steel-reinforced doors. The room is an anomaly of design, sterile and impersonal, yet electrified by the gravitational pull of countless momentous decisions made within its confines. A cluster of influential faces lifts toward her arrival, their expressions immediately sobering as they gauge the bearing of someone who has become both legend and an enigma among their ranks. The unexpected summons had reached her the previous evening, a cryptically urgent command that left no room for negotiation. Olivia strides to the head of the table, her gaze steady and prying. All eyes are on her as a shadow unfurls across the walls, her presence undeniably larger than the sum of her accolades. "General Turner," begins a voice just to her right. The speaker is General Isaac Thurman, an elder statesman type whose tenure in the armed forces stretches far enough back to overlap with conflicts now remembered only in history books. But if his age lends him authority, it does little to veil the anxiety pooling in his eyes. "Your initiative in yesterday's—" He pauses, choosing his words carefully. "Altercation has set wheels in motion that we are only beginning to fully grasp." Before he continues, the room's dimly lit screen crackles alive, flooding the space with a faint cobalt hue. A grainy video from the precinct emerges, a shaky phone recording taken by one of the bystanders at Olivia's traffic stop. Though the footage is cluttered by the murmurs of an unsettled crowd, the narrative is unmistakable. Officer Shelton's sneer, his barely restrained contempt, Olivia's unwavering retort, followed by the gasps of a stunned gathering. The room is held captive briefly by the sequence. The authority they collectively embody is rendered momentarily impotent by the visceral brutality of the situation. Olivia allows herself only the smallest breath before speaking. "It's not just the wheels we've set in motion," she declares, her voice sober yet laden with intent. "This was never a matter confined to one incident or one person. It's a systemic corruption, a cultural fracture. And if we as a nation don't confront it, we'll slide further into irreparable damage." Thurman clears his throat uneasily. "General, your point is well taken, but the chain reaction to such exposure threatens more than public discourse. It emboldens opposition and, in global perceptions, paints a portrait of instability within U.S. structures. It's the type of argument Olivia expected, and the exact one she is ready to dismantle. Confidence in a broken system offers no stability at all," she counters, her sharp cadence piercing the muted grumbles around her. "You think turning away preserves our authority? It's silence that destroys it. Every time we bury accountability beneath layers of red tape, we weaken the values that define us." The table exhales collectively. Her words loom heavy, almost suffocating. Still, her sheer conviction emboldens even her detractors to hold their tongues. Silence hangs, fragile yet unbreakable, shattered only by the opening of the briefing room door. A young officer strides in, carrying a slim black folder marked by an unassuming Pentagon insignia. He places it squarely before Olivia and retreats without a word. The contents of the folder confirm what Olivia suspected all along. It's an intelligence briefing expanded from data tied to racial profiling cases within enforcement systems, but it stretches far deeper than anticipated. Detailed reports expose cycles of internal suppression among local police precincts, not just Shelton's misconduct, but networks of insidious practices, extending an uninterrupted genealogy into major political thresholds. Each page is a damning pillar of evidence, crafting a blueprint of institutional failure that thrives on silence. Her gaze hardens as she speaks again, this time directed at no one in particular, but resonating with all present. What happens next will not be measured solely by individual tempers or public headlines. It will be judged by whether we commit to the ideals our country claims to uphold or take yet another step into hollow symbolism. An older officer across from her adjusts nervously in his seat. "What are you proposing, General Turner? A media-fueled witch hunt?" Olivia's lips tighten. "Justice isn't a witch hunt when evidence stands plainly in the daylight," she retorts, tapping the file with her index finger. Transparency isn't publicity, it's integrity. Before another debate can erupt, a new voice interjects from the monitor, cutting across their collective tension like the crack of a whip. It's the unmistakably clipped tone of an intelligence analyst patched in remotely. "General," the voice announces, "there's been a development tied to the disruption General Turner faced. Surveillance feeds from that precinct have identified irregularities, data breaches, surfacing sensitive information about certain personnel." The room collectively stiffens, not from shock, but shared apprehension over what more vulnerabilities might now come to light. Thurman turns abruptly toward the screen, his calm demeanor increasingly frayed. "Confirm origins of this breach," he barks. Olivia allows her silence to extend just long enough to make her next remark stand firmly out. "Confirmation isn't always compatible with containment," she muses dryly. "The question now isn't whether this breach does more harm than good, it's how we wield what's already broken through." But even as her words take shape, Olivia's focus sharpens in a distinctly private direction. There's a name buried within those records, one she hadn't uttered aloud in years. It's at this moment that the clamor of hurriedly fielding solutions overlaps faintly with the present. The meeting is adjourned into clustered side huddles, power shifts among generational priorities. Thurman attempts another overview recap, pushing between memory inputs and pulling away briefly into her private corridor reflecting room audiences. Olivia doesn't betray intellectual focus, even when aware there's evidence leveled, revealing defection placements. Time scores plot rather dramatic overhead shadow cliff sequence, building respective dilemmas forming immediate clarifying future route. Cliff proximity echo choice, guarantees compounded final, left unsaid. Scripting detailed forcefulness command. Outright anti-impression, bat archlights. Third trigger phone, parallel deadline. Exceeding likely import sequences. Mounting renewed focus, exceptionally opportunity command. The cool evening air felt crisp against General Olivia Turner's skin as she stepped out of the Pentagon's shadowy corridors and into the concrete-lined parking structure. Her SUV waited in the far corner, parked in shadows, as though attempting to remain unnoticed amidst the sea of nondescript government-issued vehicles. She walked with purpose, her heels clicking sharply against the asphalt, her earlier confrontation replaying itself in her mind. Every word, every look exchanged in that suffocating briefing room was etched into her memory, yet she knew the most important battle still lay ahead. Sliding into the driver's seat, Olivia exhaled slowly, her pulse steady but her thoughts racing. She placed the slim black folder she had been handed onto the passenger seat, its contents now a weighty burden on her conscience. The compiled data had been damning, a concrete map of systemic abuse, negligence, and suppression. And yet, as revealing as it was, it remained only a small fraction of the truth she sought to illuminate. The system was fractured far beyond the scope of one precinct, one officer, or even one institution. The road ahead would be fraught with opposition, but she had never been one to retreat. Her phone buzzed, its sudden vibration breaking through the stillness of the car. The screen lit up with an unknown number, the digits unfamiliar, but the sense of urgency unmistakable. She hesitated briefly, her instincts sharpening as she considered the possibilities. Finally, she answered. "General Turner?" she said, her voice measured, though tinged with curiosity. "General Turner, this is Major Scott Reynolds," came the calm yet hurried voice on the other end. "I believe we may have information that will be of interest to you, but this line is not secure. Can we meet in person?" She paused, weighing the risk against the potential reward. Major Reynolds was a name she hadn't heard in years. He'd been a promising young officer under her command during one of her earlier overseas campaigns. If he was reaching out now, it wasn't without good reason. "Where?" she asked, her tone brisk. "There's a diner just off Route 24, about 15 miles from your current location," Reynolds replied. "I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. The line disconnected before she could respond, leaving Olivia glancing at her phone with narrowed eyes. She didn't like the cloak and dagger games, but she trusted her intuition, and it told her this was a lead worth pursuing. With a determined nod, she started the engine, her SUV rumbling to life as she pulled out of the parking structure and into the sprawling maze of nighttime streets. The diner was the kind of place that looked like it had been lifted straight out of a 1950s Americana postcard. Neon lights flickered above the entrance, casting an eerie glow onto the parking lot. A handful of vehicles were scattered across the lot, but the place was otherwise quiet. Olivia parked her SUV near the edge, taking a moment to survey her surroundings before stepping out. Her hand instinctively brushed against the small sidearm concealed beneath her jacket. A habit born more out of caution than fear, pushing through the glass doors, she was greeted by the scent of coffee and fried food. A few patrons looked up briefly before returning to their meals, disinterested. Across the room, seated in a corner booth, was Major Reynolds. He appeared older than she remembered, though his posture still carried the bearing of a soldier. His expression was grim but resolute. "General Turner," he greeted as she approached, rising briefly out of respect before gesturing for her to sit. "Major Reynolds," she replied, sliding into the booth across from him. "What's so urgent you couldn't say it over the phone?" Reynolds glanced around the diner, ensuring no one was listening, before lowering his voice. "I've been monitoring some chatter from within law enforcement and intelligence circles. The incident at the precinct has stirred up more than public outrage. It's exposed cracks in their systems, cracks that certain individuals are desperate to keep hidden. I believe the data breach mentioned in your briefing is only the beginning." Olivia frowned. "What are you saying, Reynolds?" "I'm saying there's a coordinated effort to suppress information, to silence anyone who could pose a threat. And it's not just Shelton or the precinct. This runs much deeper, General. There are powerful individuals who stand to lose everything if you continue down this path." His words hung heavy in the air, their implication clear. For a moment, Olivia said nothing, her gaze steady as she studied his face. Finally, she spoke. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because I owe you," Reynolds admitted, his voice tinged with something akin to guilt. "You taught me to stand for something bigger than myself, and now it's my turn to help you do the same." Before she could respond, the bell above the diner's door jingled, signaling a new arrival. Both Olivia and Reynolds instinctively glanced toward the door, their bodies tensing slightly. A man in a dark suit entered, his expression unreadable as he scanned the room. He didn't seem to notice them, or if he did, he made no indication, but his presence felt out of place, wrong in a way that set Olivia's instincts ablaze. Reynolds leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to leave, now." Without waiting for her response, he slid out of the booth, his movements swift but deliberate. Olivia followed, her strides purposeful as they exited the diner and stepped into the cool night air. The man in the suit remained inside, but Olivia could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking their every move. As they reached her SUV, Reynolds stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "There's a safe house about 10 miles north of here. We can regroup there, plan our next steps." Olivia nodded, her mind already racing ahead. "Lead the way." They climbed into separate vehicles, Reynolds taking the lead as they pulled out of the parking lot and onto the empty highway. The hum of the engine was the only sound, the darkness of the road stretching endlessly before them. Olivia's grip on the steering wheel tightened, her senses on high alert. Every shadow, every flicker of light in her peripheral vision felt like a potential threat. It wasn't long before the faint glow of headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, growing brighter as the vehicle closed the distance between them. Olivia's pulse quickened. Whoever was behind them wasn't interested in keeping a low profile. "Reynolds," she called over the secure line they had established before leaving the diner. "We've got company." "I see them," came his grim reply. "Stay close. If they follow us off the main road, we'll know for sure." The safe house came into view just as the pursuing vehicle's intentions became clear. As Reynolds turned onto a gravel path leading toward the concealed building, the car behind them accelerated, its headlights flaring like twin beacons of aggression. Olivia barely had time to react before the sound of gunfire shattered the stillness of the night. Bullets ricocheted off the back of her SUV, the metallic ping echoing in her ears. "Hold your position," Reynolds shouted through the comms. "We'll make a stand at the safe house." The two vehicles skidded to a halt in front of the nondescript structure, their doors flying open as Olivia and Reynolds leapt out, weapons drawn. The pursuing car stopped just short of the driveway, its occupants emerging with an air of menace. There were 3 of the men in tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks. Olivia's mind was a whirlwind of calculated decisions. She crouched behind the cover of her vehicle, exchanging a brief glance with Reynolds before nodding toward their attackers. Without a word, they opened fire, their shots precise and deliberate. The night erupted into chaos, the crack of gunfire mingling with the shouts of aggression. It was over in minutes. The masked men fled, retreating into the shadows from which they had emerged. Olivia and Reynolds didn't pursue. Their priority now was survival, not answers. Those would come later. As the dust settled, Olivia holstered her weapon, her breath steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She turned to Reynolds, her expression grim. "We need to move. They won't stop until we're silenced." Reynolds nodded, his face pale but determined. "Then we keep moving. Until we expose the truth, we don't stop." In that moment, Olivia made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whoever stood in her way, she would see this mission through. The system had long thrived on fear and silence, but she was done playing by its rules. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the battle had only just begun. Recap: Olivia Turner meets an old ally, Major Scott Reynolds, who reveals deeper corruption tied to her traffic stop. Their attempt to regroup is interrupted by an ambush, setting the stage for a perilous fight for truth and justice. The rising sun casts pale streaks of light across the deserted highway as General Olivia Turner and Major Scott Reynolds race through the remnants of night. Olivia's SUV hugs the curves of the winding road, the engine's hum blending with the faint echo of her heartbeat. Reynolds, ahead in a nondescript sedan, keeps his eyes darting between the horizon and his rearview mirror. The ambush they narrowly escaped hours ago has left its mark, but there's no time for shock or hesitation now. They are hunted, and every moment counts. Olivia adjusts her grip on the wheel, the weight of her mission pressing heavily against her chest. Her mind loops over the ambush like a relentless reel. The masked men, their tactical precision, their sudden retreat, it all points to an organized effort far beyond random intimidation. Someone powerful is orchestrating this chase, someone deeply invested in keeping the truth buried. But Olivia doesn't break stride. Her resolve is forged from years of combat and leadership, and retreat was never an option. Reynolds' voice crackles through the secure line. "Safe house is 3 miles up. Keep an eye on your 6. "Copy that," Olivia responds, her tone clipped, focused. As the shadowed outlines of thick pine trees grow denser along the roadside, a sudden flicker in her rearview mirror catches her attention. Headlights, too far to make out clearly but moving fast. Adrenaline spikes. She leans toward the comm device clipped to her dashboard. "We've got a tail," she says grimly. "They're closing in." "Stay on course," Reynolds replies, though his voice betrays a hint of tension. "We need to reach the perimeter." The safe house looms ahead, barely distinguishable from its surroundings. Nestled within a dense cluster of trees, the low-slung building looks like any other abandoned structure, a design meant to deter curiosity. As they pull up to the gravel driveway, the pursuing car keeps its distance, slowing just enough to lurk in the shadows. Olivia knows this quiet moment is the calm before the storm. Her instincts sharpen like a blade. Reynolds steps out of his car first, scanning their surroundings while keeping one hand on the holstered weapon at his side. Olivia exits her SUV a moment later, pulling her jacket tighter against the chill morning breeze. Without speaking, the two exchange a tacit understanding. They move quickly, Reynolds using a keypad to unlock the discreetly reinforced door of the safe house. Inside, the stark interior offers minimal comfort: bare walls, a steel table, secured windows, but safety isn't comfort, it's function. "We can hold here for a while," Reynolds says, his voice steady as he locks the door behind them. He moves to a corner desk and powers up a terminal hidden beneath a false wooden surface. "But we're not alone out there." Olivia nods, her focus narrowing. They're not giving up. Whoever sent them isn't interested in loose ends. "Loose ends don't shoot back," he counters dryly. "We've rattled something big, General. We need to figure out what before they make another move." For the next hour, they pore over maps, intelligence logs, and intercepted communications that Reynolds had managed to smuggle out from his previous posting. Patterns emerge like jagged puzzle pieces: names, dates, redacted documents tying high-ranking officials to covert operations and systemic abuses. The scope is staggering. From falsified police records to backroom deals shielding corrupt precincts, it stretches both laterally and vertically through layers of power. Olivia's eyes narrow as she traces a particularly damning connection: a direct path to an influential senator known for his forceful defense of law enforcement despite countless controversies. "Senator Clayborn," she mutters, almost to herself. She taps the screen, the circle around his name growing bolder. He's the linchpin. If we can expose his role— Reynolds shakes his head grimly. "Exposing him won't be enough. Someone like Clayborn has contingencies, fall guys. Even if we bring him down, the machine keeps running." "Then we dismantle the machine, piece by piece," Olivia asserts. "And it starts with this." Reynolds hesitates, his brow furrowing. Are you sure you want to go after him directly? Clayborn has resources, lawyers, media sway. The second you make this public, you'll have a target painted squarely on your back. Olivia's gaze is unyielding. If fear kept me from doing what's right, I wouldn't be standing here. A grim determination sharpens her tone. Gather this intel. We're taking action. Their conversation is cut short by the faintest sound outside, the unmistakable crunch of gravel under cautious footsteps. Reynolds freezes, his hand hovering over the handgun at his side. Olivia motions for silence, her training locking into place like a second skin. She moves toward the nearest window, peering out through the slit in the blind. The figure approaching is shrouded in early morning fog, their movements careful, deliberate. Then, a knock-a single. Sharp repechos through the quiet safe house, sending a ripple of tension down Olivia's spine. She exchanges a glance with Reynolds, both of them calculating. "Stay ready," she whispers, her voice barely audible. She steps toward the door, her sidearm drawn but held low. "Who's there?" A pause. Then, a muffled voice responds, "Captain Elijah Bancroft, former U.S. Army Intelligence." Something about the name triggers recognition in Olivia. She risks opening the door slightly, her weapon still at the ready. On the other side stands a man in his 50s, his weathered features speaking to decades of service and sacrifice. Bancroft raises his hands slightly, a show of peace. "General Turner," he says, his voice calm but insistent, "we don't have much time. You're in grave danger." Olivia doesn't lower her weapon but steps aside, allowing him entry. Bancroft moves quickly, his eyes scanning the interior as though assessing its security. "How did you find us?" Reynolds demands, his tone wary. "I've been tracking this operation for months," Bancroft replies, urgency lacing his words. "When I saw the situation escalating, I knew it was only a matter of time before it led here." Olivia interrupts, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "What situation? What do you know?" Bancroft doesn't mince words. "The attack you survived wasn't random. It's part of a coordinated effort to neutralize anyone who threatens the status quo. Clayborn and his allies have created a shadow network within law enforcement, one that operates with near-total impunity. You've surfaced intel that could dismantle it, and they know it." Reynolds crosses his arms, skepticism etched across his features. "Why should we trust you?" Bancroft meets his gaze squarely. "Because I've already burned my bridges to get this far. Everything I know, I've risked my life to uncover, and because I believe General Turner is the only one who can finish what I started." Olivia studies him carefully, her instincts parsing truth from manipulation. Finally, she asks, "What's your plan?" Bancroft hesitates, then steps closer. There's a secured server holding the crown jewel of Clayborn's operation, a database connecting every player, every transaction, every decision made in the shadows. It's the key to exposing and dismantling the entire network. But accessing it requires more than just determination. "What does it require?" Olivia presses, her voice unwavering. "Access codes," Bancroft replies, 3 of them held separately by Clayborn's most trusted operatives. Without them, the database remains a ghost untouchable. The enormity of the task sets in, but Olivia doesn't flinch. "Where do we find them?" Bancroft pulls a weathered notebook from his jacket, flipping to a page covered in precise handwriting. "One's at a secured federal building downtown. Another was last traced to a private estate outside the city. The third," he hesitates, "is deep within a covert ops facility under Clayborn's control." Reynolds exhales sharply. "That's a suicide mission." "Only if you go in blind," Bancroft counters. "With the right strategy, we can extract all 3 before they know what hit them." Olivia steps closer, her presence commanding. "What do you need from us?" "Coordination," Bancroft replies. "I've got assets who can provide logistical support, but I need leadership. Someone who can unify the effort, who won't back down when the pressure mounts." Olivia nods, her decision made. "We split into teams. Divide and conquer." Before Bancroft can respond, the perimeter alarms they had set up earlier trigger, a piercing sound cutting through the morning stillness. The 3 instinctively reach for their weapons, moving toward their defensive positions. Through the narrow slits in the window blinds, figures emerge from the trees, armed, their movements coordinated. The safe house is compromised. Bancroft's voice is steady, though his expression is grim. "They found us." Olivia's grip tightens on her weapon as adrenaline courses through her veins. "Then we fight our way out." She glances at Reynolds. "Secure the intel, burn everything else. We can't let them take anything. As the first flashbang shatters a nearby window, plunging them into chaos, Olivia's mind is already calculating their next move. They will survive this. They have to. The stakes have never been higher. The sun hesitates on the horizon, its rays struggling to break through the dense fog hanging over the forested hills. Olivia Turner crouches behind a steel kitchen counter in the safe house, steadying her breath as shadows flicker behind the boarded windows. The alarms have been silenced. They were cut off by the masked attackers closing in, but the tension is deafening, as though every nerve in her body is tuned to a silent drumbeat of impending chaos. Reynolds is across the room, crouched low beneath the terminal desk where their gathered intelligence lies scattered, its importance all but irreversible now. His face is pale but determined as he whispers into his comms. "Bancroft, status?" Bancroft, who had taken position by the rear exit, whispers back, his voice tinged with urgency. "3 at the back door. They're moving slow, trying to avoid detection, but they'll breach in under a minute. Did you rig the charges?" "They're set," Reynolds replies. "A controlled blast will buy us time, but if we're still inside, we won't be walking away." Olivia presses her back against the cold surface of the counter, her weapon steady in her hands. She leans to one side, peeking through a narrow slit in the blinds. The figures outside are more defined now, their tactical movements unmistakably professional. Whoever sent these operatives didn't skimp on resources. This was a unit designed to eliminate, not intimidate. "Reynolds, Bancroft," she says, her voice low but commanding. "We split 3 ways. Bancroft takes the woods, Reynolds the driveway. I'll hold them here. Do not engage unless you're cornered." Reynolds hesitates, his objection palpable even through the moment's urgency. "General, you can't." "I can," Olivia cuts him off sharply. "We don't lose the intel and we don't die here. Follow the plan. That's an order." A brief silence passes before both men acknowledge with clipped affirmations. Olivia counts the seconds as Reynolds gathers the crucial files and slips them into a secure, fireproof bag. Bancroft signals from the rear door with a quick nod, then vanishes under the cover of the forest. Within seconds, the first breach occurs. The front window shatters inward, glass scattering across the wooden floor like tiny diamonds. Olivia's instincts kick in, and she fires a controlled burst toward the intruders without hesitation. The resounding cracks of her weapon are met with suppressed muzzle flashes from the attackers, the air thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder. Reynolds uses the distraction to slip out the side door, clutching the intel close to his chest as he disappears into the pre-dawn darkness. Olivia knows he'll head for the secondary rendezvous point, a remote barn several miles away that Bancroft had scouted earlier. Her job now is to keep the heat off him for as long as she can. "General Turner, do you copy?" The voice in her earpiece is Bancroft's, barely audible through the rising chaos. "Copy," Olivia mutters, reloading her weapon with swift precision. "Reynolds is clear. What's your status?" "Making my way through the woods," Bancroft replies, his breaths labored. "But they've sent another Team 2 vehicles, approaching fast from the north." Olivia exhales slowly, a surge of clarity cutting through the adrenaline. This wasn't just a cleanup operation. It was an outright manhunt, coordinated and relentless. Whoever was running the show wanted to ensure no loose ends escaped. "Keep moving," she orders. "We regroup at the barn." Another wave of attackers pushes through the front door, their impact splintering the wood and shaking the frame. Olivia takes cover, her shots carefully placed as she retreats further into the house. She knows the layout well enough to exploit its choke points. Narrow hallways, sharp corners, but she's also keenly aware that her ammunition is dwindling. The firefight intensifies, each exchange of bullets a chess move in a deadly game of strategy. Olivia's training holds firm, her movements calculated and deliberate. She takes down one assailant with a shot to the knee, incapacitating him as another rushes in to take his place. Her military mind categorizes every detail, their formations, their weaknesses, until a sudden lull in the noise signals a shift. "Fall back!" one of the attackers shouts, a voice sharp with authority. Olivia takes a cautious step forward, her weapon still raised. The figures retreating into the tree line aren't in disarray. They're regrouping. Planning their next move, she takes the opportunity to escape. With a final glance at the now-destroyed safe house, she slips out the back door and into the labyrinth of trees beyond. The forest envelops her like a second skin, its shadows deep and familiar. She moves quickly but quietly, her senses attuned to every rustle of leaves, every shift in the wind. Minutes stretch like hours as Olivia navigates the dense undergrowth, her path deliberate but winding. She knows better than to head straight toward the barn. The attackers will anticipate her movements. Instead, she circles wide, using the terrain to mask her trail. When she finally emerges onto an open field, the first rays of sunlight break through the horizon, casting the barn in a golden glow. It's a solitary structure, weathered but sturdy, surrounded by overgrown grass that sways gently in the morning breeze. Olivia takes a deep breath, scanning the area for any signs of movement. "Reynolds, Bancroft," she calls through her comms. "What's your 20? "Inside the barn," Reynolds replies immediately. "Bancroft's securing the perimeter." Olivia moves swiftly but cautiously toward the building, her weapon still at the ready. The barn door creaks as she pushes it open, revealing Reynolds seated at a makeshift workstation, the gathered intel spread out before him. Bancroft stands near the back entrance, his rifle slung over his shoulder as he peers through a narrow crack in the wall. "We're clear for now," Bancroft says without turning. "But they'll come. It's only a matter of time." Olivia nods, her focus shifting to Reynolds. "What do we have?" Reynolds taps a stack of files. "Everything we managed to pull. Names, locations, financial records. It's enough to implicate Clayborn and several key allies, but without the server data, it's circumstantial at best." "Then we get the server data," Olivia says firmly. She turns to Bancroft. "You mentioned access codes. Do we have any idea where the first target is?" Bancroft consults his notebook, flipping to a page marked with hastily scrawled coordinates. "The downtown Federal building. It's heavily guarded, but if we move fast, we might catch them off guard." A tense silence falls over the group as the weight of the mission sets in. Olivia meets each of their gazes, her expression resolute. "This is it. No second chances. We hit fast, extract the codes, and disappear before they even know we were there. Are we clear?" Both men nod, their determination matching her own. Olivia exhales, steeling herself for what lies ahead. The battle was far from over, but the fight was just beginning. The dim glow of the approaching sunrise struggled to pierce the heavy fog layered over the forest. General Olivia Turner crouched low among the overgrown brush, her every sense tuned to the rhythmic thump of approaching footsteps. The air was sharp with the faint metallic scent of gunfire lingering from her escape, but it was overpowered by the rich, earthy dampness of dew on the mossy ground. She steadied her breathing, clutching her sidearm firmly in her hand, as the dull crunch of boots on gravel echoed closer. There was no room for hesitation now. Only precision and resolve mattered. Nearby, she caught sight of Major Reynolds about 20 meters to her left. He moved like a ghost, his dark clothing blending seamlessly with the shadows cast by the towering pines. His movements were controlled, deliberate, as he signaled to Olivia with 2 fingers and then pointed toward a cluster of rocks that formed a natural bottleneck ahead. She nodded, understanding instantly. They would force their pursuers into a narrow ambush if it came to it. From her earpiece, Bancroft's hushed voice crackled faintly. "2 hostiles confirmed at your 6, General. Possible reinforcements inbound. Isolate and eliminate quickly, or we're compromised." Olivia pressed her finger against her comms device to reply. "Understood. Reynolds and I will hold until you're clear to rejoin. Retrieve additional supplies and rendezvous at Checkpoint Bravo." "Copy that," came Bancroft's swift reply, followed by the muffled sound of him moving through the underbrush. As silence returned to the forest, Olivia focused entirely on the task at hand. Whoever was hunting them knew what they were doing. These weren't typical hired guns. Their tactics were careful, their movements calculated. Those who sent them spared no expense to ensure their assets succeeded. Attacking this safe house and relentlessly pursuing them into the wilderness wasn't an intimidation tactic, it was a message. There would be no mercy, no negotiations. Failure meant elimination. The footsteps grew closer. Olivia sank lower into the brush and tightened her grip on her weapon. Through a gap in the leaves, she spotted the outline of a tall figure clad in tactical gear. A hood obscured much of his face, but his movements revealed a calmness born of expertise. He carried a suppressed weapon angled low, his head tilting slightly as though listening for the faintest noise. Behind him, a second figure emerged, similarly clad. The 2 advanced cautiously, communicating with hand signals rather than spoken words. Olivia's heartbeat remained steady, her military conditioning suppressing any tremor of fear or hesitation. She shifted her weight carefully, silent as a shadow as she took a better position to sight her targets. Reynolds mimicked her, moving closer to the cluster of rocks they had identified earlier as the choke point. The trees stretched high above them, their canopy forming a veil of shifting shadows that almost seemed alive. The first figure stopped abruptly, holding up a fist to signal his companion to halt. He crouched low, scanning the terrain ahead with the single-minded focus of a predator. Olivia adjusted her angle, lining up her shot. A breeze stirred the leaves around them, masking their approach just long enough for her to silently count down. 3, 2, 1. Her shot rang out, muffled but precise, striking the first hostile squarely in the chest. He collapsed onto his right side with a muted gasp, dropping his weapon as he hit the ground. The second figure reacted instantly, raising his firearm and releasing a burst of suppressed rounds toward Olivia's general direction. The bullets buried themselves into the dirt and bark to her left, kicking up a spray of soil and wood chips. Reynolds, swift and deliberate, took his shot next. The crack of his weapon was followed by the sudden fall of the second figure. The quiet returned almost as suddenly as it had been disrupted, but the tension thickened rather than eased. Olivia didn't lower her weapon as she rose slightly, eyes scanning the immediate area for signs of more hostiles before gesturing to Reynolds to approach carefully. "Clear," he murmured as he knelt to inspect the first fallen figure for identification or intel. Olivia mirrored his actions, patting down the second operative while keeping her focus split between the task and her surroundings. "They're not carrying anything overt," Reynolds muttered. He tugged at the Velcro on the man's chest rig, but found only standard-issue ammunition and basic survival gear. "No IDs, no symbols. This is Black Ops, commando grade." Olivia merely nodded, her attention drawn to the thin seams on the attacker's gloves, stitching so fine it appeared seamlessly integrated into the material. She recognized the type instantly: custom, costly, the kind that only well-funded services or high-end private contractors had access to. She clicked her comms. "Bancroft status? All clear on my end, General. Check the surrounding half-mile and no additional units. You and Reynolds secure? 2 targets neutralized, but traceable connections are slim. Their employers didn't spare expenses. We need to assume this was just the forward assault," Olivia replied, her tone sharp despite the steady calm projected by her training. "Regroup as planned at Bravo. Do not delay. We may not have long before reinforcements arrive," she continued, then paused as her gaze lingered on the fallen soldier. "Bring additional extraction equipment if possible. We're burning the remains here." "Understood. En route," Bancroft confirmed. The daylight was beginning to stretch thin bands of light through the gaps in the trees by the time the three regrouped at a shallow ravine marked by dense thickets. Bancroft arrived with an oversized military-grade backpack slung over one shoulder, his expression stony but alert. He carried a second rifle slung tightly across his back and 3 flare-like devices strapped to his chest strap. "Cleared trails along my northern entry," Bancroft said before gesturing pointedly toward Olivia, "but I intercepted a satellite scan from recon tracking movements. Their sensors likely flagged retreat coordinates south of our barn setup. Transmission showed terminals default timing before squads resume proximity attempt escalations. That confirms they're funneling resources while their networks try patch timing inconsistencies," Reynolds muttered grimly. "Then concise escalation recon safety pivots onto redirecting patterns, now scope regress open positions." Bancroft hesitated briefly, rewriting subtly occluded streams inside layered explorable circuitry matrices, recon layers, coast-side caching, uplink backup contingency, medkit entrances, recalibrating suppressive area movement, ping indistinguishable distancing, proximity deployed crossroads, predefined override, alt-input proxies, minimized spacing, pathwork, unattended spare regions. Within seconds, General Turner approximated, "My skill-eye compressors yourself, defined shortly." The wind whipped through the dense forest, its bite sharp against the dampness that clung to Olivia Turner's skin. She had been running for what felt like hours, though it had likely only been minutes, her boots crunching against the dry leaves and snapping the fallen branches beneath her quick, calculated strides. The fog draped itself over the uneven terrain like a predator, concealing threats and narrowing the world to only the path immediately before her. A fine sheen of sweat mixed with the dirt on her face, but her grip on the weapon slung across her chest remained firm, focused. Physical discomfort was irrelevant. Survival was paramount. The comlink in her ear crackled, breaking the maddening silence of her flight. Bancroft's grim voice came through, faint but distinct. "General, I've found higher ground about 100 meters west from the rendezvous point. Reynolds is there now, Hostiles are circling, but they haven't zeroed in yet. Understood, Olivia rasped, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. She adjusted course, cutting through a dense patch of saplings and skirting the edge of a rocky incline. Her peripheral vision caught glimpses of dark shapes moving along the flanks, silent and deliberate, like wolves sizing up their prey. The team of mercenaries tracking them was relentless, their coordination suggesting military precision. This was no routine operation. Their objective was clear: neutralize, no witnesses. As Olivia pressed onward, her mind filtered through possibilities. The safehouse breach had not just been an isolated incident, it was confirmation that her adversaries had resources far beyond what she had anticipated. Whoever Clayborn's backers were, they operated with both institutional protection and a keen awareness of how to weaponize silence. To dismantle the system they controlled, she would not only need evidence, she would need to survive long enough to wield it. A burst of gunfire shattered the stillness ahead, sharp and deliberate. Olivia stopped in her tracks, instincts taking over as she dropped into a crouch. Through the thick veil of fog, the sound of Reynolds' voice echoed over the comms, strained but controlled. Contact! Multiple hostiles southwest flank, holding position by the boulder need suppressive fire. Without hesitation, Olivia pivoted toward his location, her path now angling sharply uphill. The underbrush thinned as she approached the ridge Bancroft had described, revealing glimpses of Reynolds pinned down behind a jagged outcropping of rock. 3 figures in tactical gear moved steadily toward him, their rifles raised in tight formation. Olivia couldn't see Bancroft, but she trusted the older operative was nearby, lying in wait. Sliding behind a fallen tree, Olivia steadied her rifle and lined up her first shot. Controlled exhalation, steady hands. One pull of the trigger, and the lead mercenary crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering against the rocks. The others froze, their heads snapping toward her direction. Olivia fired again, forcing them to dive for cover behind a cluster of moss-covered stumps. "Reynolds, move!" she barked into the comms. The younger man didn't need further prompting. He rose from his position and dashed toward higher ground, zigzagging to avoid making himself an easy target. As he reached her side, Olivia laid down more cover fire, the crisp cracks of her rifle keeping the assailants pinned long enough for Reynolds to collapse next to her, panting heavily. "They're not amateurs," he muttered, adjusting the grip on his sidearm. "Whoever sent them underestimated our fight, but they're regrouping. We've got maybe 60 seconds before they push again." "Then we make those seconds count," Olivia replied. She reached for a flash grenade strapped to her belt and held it up for him to see. "You create a distraction. I'll flank." Reynolds hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "On your signal." Olivia rose to a half-crouch, her movement smooth and silent as she circled wide toward the enemy's position. The steady rhythm of her pulse drowned out all distractions, the forest fading into a blur of muted greens and browns. There was only the mission, only the next move. Reynolds' voice rang out, sharp and defiant. "Over here, you bastards!" His decoy fire erupted in the direction opposite her approach, drawing the attention of the mercenaries. They broke cover, their formation disciplined but predictable. Olivia used the momentary chaos to position herself behind them and hurled the flash grenade. The moment it detonated, filling the air with a blinding burst of light and sound, she struck. 2 clean shots, 2 more enemies down. The third stumbled, disoriented by the grenade, and Olivia closed the distance with calculated precision. She drove the butt of her rifle into the back of his head, dropping him instantly. As he fell, she confiscated his comm device, tucking it into her pocket for later analysis. Every detail mattered. Every fragment of intel could be the edge they needed. Reynolds rejoined her, blood trickling from a shallow cut on his cheek but otherwise intact. "They'll have reinforcements en route," he said, scanning the area. "I know," Olivia replied, already moving toward the ridge's zenith. "We stick to the plan. Bancroft should have eyes on the primary extraction route by now. Let's move." The 2 operatives fell into step, their movements synchronized despite the urgency. The forest began to thin as they ascended, the jagged rocks underfoot giving way to patches of gravel. By the time they reached the summit, the first rays of daylight pierced through the fog, illuminating the valley below. There, nestled amid the trees, was a narrow dirt road barely wide enough for a single vehicle. Bancroft stood at its edge, his rifle raised as he scanned their surroundings with the precision of a sniper. "Glad you could join me," Bancroft muttered as they approached, his tone as dry as ever. He didn't look at them, his focus locked on the tree line. "Extraction route's clear, but not for long. Take a look." He handed Olivia a pair of binoculars. She raised them to her eyes and scanned the horizon. Through the faint haze of morning light, she spotted movement, two black SUVs navigating the winding roads leading toward their position. They moved with alarming speed, their purpose unmistakable. "ETA?" Olivia asked, lowering the binoculars. 6 minutes, give or take, Bancroft replied. But that's not the worst of it. He gestured toward the ridge running parallel to their location. Olivia followed the line of his hand and saw them figures dressed in tactical black, scaling the steep incline with ropes, their progress slow but inexorable. "Clayborn's pulling out all the stops," Reynolds muttered. "Ground units, aerial drones, it's overkill." "No," Olivia said, her tone ice-cold. "It's fear." She turned to Bancroft. "Options?" "Fallback positions too far," Bancroft replied. "We hold here, dig in, make them pay for every inch." Olivia considered the terrain, her mind racing through scenarios. The dirt road offered limited cover but could serve as a choke point. The high ground they currently occupied gave them a tactical advantage, but it wouldn't last against their enemy's superior numbers. They needed a decisive action, something to disrupt and dismantle the attackers before reinforcements could fully mobilize. An idea struck her, audacious and dangerous but effective. "Detour the SUVs," she said, pointing to a series of boulders perched precariously along the ridge. "A well-placed shot sends those rocks down the slope, cuts off their approach." "And the climbers?" Reynolds asked. "We intercept them before they reach the top," Olivia said, her gaze steely. "Bancroft, you cover the road. Lay suppressive fire on the SUVs once they're stalled. Reynolds, with me." The men nodded, their trust in her command unshaken. As Bancroft set up his rifle overlooking the valley, Olivia and Reynolds moved swiftly toward the ridge's edge where the climbers were advancing. The tension was palpable, every step amplifying the weight of the moment. Olivia positioned herself behind a cluster of rocks, peering down at the approaching climbers. There were 5 in total, their progress steady despite the treacherous ascent. She and Reynolds exchanged a glance, the unspoken agreement passing between them. One shot, one target, repeat. The first climber fell without a sound, his grip slipping as gravity claimed him. His fall knocked another loose, their cries swallowed by the forest below. But the remaining 3 quickened their pace, their determination unshaken. "Hold steady," Olivia murmured, her sights locked on the next target. She waited for the perfect moment, then fired. The shot struck true, sending debris scattering and breaking the climber's hold. He plummeted, leaving only 2. Before they could finish their assault, Bancroft's rifle echoed from the other side of the ridge. Olivia turned just in time to see the boulders cascading down the dirt path, smashing into the SUVs with brutal force. One vehicle flipped on its side, smoke billowing from its ruptured engine. The other skidded to a halt, its occupants spilling out in disarray. Bancroft's voice came through the comms, charged with grim satisfaction. "Road sealed. They're on foot now." Olivia nodded to Reynolds. "Time to clean up." With precision and resolve, they dispatched the remaining climbers before regrouping at Bancroft's position. The valley below was now a tableau of chaos, smoking vehicles, disorganized combatants, and one undeniable truth. They had bought themselves time, but the fight was far from over. As the 3 operatives stood side by side, the faint hum of a helicopter in the distance drew their attention skyward. Olivia's jaw clenched. Clayborn wasn't done yet, and neither were they. Recap. Olivia, Reynolds, and Bancroft face relentless mercenaries while fleeing through the forest. After a tense ambush and a calculated counterattack, they delay their pursuers but face a new threat, a helicopter closing in fast. The initial gust of wind from the rotor blades was deafening, stirring up the forest debris in manic spirals. General Olivia Turner scanned the horizon, the distinct thrum of helicopter engines reverberating through the dense trees. The vehicle wasn't visible yet, but its presence could be felt, a metal predator slicing through the morning mist with precision and intent, honing in on its prey. Olivia's heart was steady, her thoughts sharp as a blade. Each beat of the rotor was a ticking clock. She and her team had to move, and fast. Bancroft crouched beside her, his expression set in a stony mask of focus. "2 things," he muttered, his voice low and clipped. "First, that's military grade. Second, they've pinpointed us." Reynolds shoved a fresh magazine into his rifle and cast a nervous glance at the sky. "You're saying we've got few options? Make it fast." Olivia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she adjusted her posture, sweeping her gaze across their surroundings. The boulder-strewn ridge offered decent coverage, but could turn into a trap if they were outflanked, especially with the incoming aerial threat. She spoke finally. "We need to ground that bird long enough to make an escape. Suggestions?" Bancroft shifted his weight, scanning the vantage points. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow ridge to the south where jagged rocks jutted out over a sheer drop. "If we can create enough smoke and fire, we'll force it to lower its altitude, or, if we're lucky, we'll clip their vision." Reynolds froze, then narrowed his eyes as he realized what Bancroft was suggesting. "You want to turn the ridge into a trap? That's insane." "Without air support ourselves, it's our best shot," Olivia interrupted, deliberately as curt as she was decisive. "Bancroft's right. The helicopter may have aerial superiority, but that doesn't equal invincibility. If it comes too low and loses visibility, we isolate the guerrillas it unloads. Then we break their momentum." Reynolds clenched his jaw but nodded. "And by break, you mean—" Olivia ignored him and pressed communication through her comlink. "Equipment check. Everyone ready? Bancroft, verify escape routes as secondary precaution." "Already ahead," Bancroft affirmed tersely. "Route Bravo's logged nearby, that ravine trail, decent fallback veer gaps, shallow inclines. They'll assume bottlenecks, evasion, forward pressure, focus geometry tactics elsewhere upwards." His sentence might have been complex, but Olivia's mind skimmed. She dissected, deciphered it, and calmly drew morphological paths through probability trapping relevant. Minutes later, the three operatives moved quickly and decisively. Olivia charged forward with enough ground clearance to confirm distance vectors, slope-set marker assessments, concealed pinpoint locations, scouted trailed enemies, somehow temp back in her broader analysis. Cleared. Patching details parallel means soon clutch rhythm, intensely, measure running sequences, balanced, actualizing precision, default tensions, solidified, conditioned alternatingage, diffused aggressive tested misleading determined, triggerograms interior termination node, simulated BST, intersplitsinal residual data, imid comp alignments. The morning sun hung low in the sky, its golden glow weak against the smoke and chaos that surrounded them. General Olivia Turner leaned over the scuffed metal table in a hastily organized tactical shelter, her sharp eyes scanning the topographical map spread out before her. The shelter, a repurposed utility building nestled into the mountainous terrain, was their temporary headquarters, a last refuge before taking the final offensive. The air was thick with tension, and every tick of the clock seemed to echo the high stakes of the mission. Behind her stood Bancroft, his expression grim as he checked and rechecked a small armory of weapons arranged neatly on the bench. Nearby, Reynolds busied himself with calibrating a communications device, though his shifting stance betrayed rising nerves. They had come a long way, surviving ambushes and firefights, but now the endgame was in sight. The final objective? Infiltrate the covert facility where Senator Clayborn's Shadow Network headquarters lay, retrieve the damning data from the prized server, and dismantle the web of corruption that had nearly cost them their lives. Olivia straightened, her finger tracing a route on the map that skirted a heavily guarded perimeter leading to the underground entry point. "This path gets us close without direct engagement," she noted, "but from the moment we cross that line, every step will be contested." Reynolds glanced up from the comms device. "What's the contingency if when this goes loud?" "It won't be pretty," Bancroft interjected, shouldering a rifle. "With the kind of security Clayborn's pulling, they'll have reinforcements on standby within minutes. It'll be a controlled firefight at best, a bloodbath at worst." Olivia's jaw tightened. "That's why speed is critical. We hit, extract, and exfil all before they know what's happening." She turned her gaze to each of them in turn, her voice steady but resolute. "This is why we're here. Clayborn's system thrives on fear and control. If we don't bring it down, no one else will." A brief silence fell over the group, broken only by the faint hum of the comms device as Reynolds finished his adjustments. Finally, Bancroft nodded. "Let's finish this." Twilight descended by the time they reached the outskirts of the facility. The compound was deceptively unassuming from the outside, a squat, concrete structure with minimal markings, barely distinguishable from the surrounding forest. But Olivia knew better than to trust its facade. Beneath the surface, the facility housed not only the server holding the keystone data, but also a network of automated defenses and armed personnel ready to neutralize any threat. The trio crouched under the cover of thick underbrush, observing the main gate through binoculars. Two guards stood at attention, their dark uniforms blending into the dim evening light. Olivia handed the binoculars to Bancroft and tapped the map secured to her wrist. "Secondary entrance here," she whispered, pointing to a maintenance tunnel concealed along the western edge of the compound. "Minimal surveillance, if intel's accurate." "And if it's not?" Bancroft asked, his tone both practical and foreboding. "Then we improvise," Olivia replied. Her gaze was unflinching, even as she acknowledged the risks. "Reynolds, take point. Bancroft flank position. I'll cover the rear." With synchronized precision, they moved through the shadows, their steps muffled by years of training. The maintenance entrance was exactly where the map indicated, a rusted metal door partially obscured by creeping ivy. Bancroft knelt to inspect the panel beside it, his deft fingers working to disable the electronic lock. Moments later, the door creaked open, and they slipped inside. The tunnel was narrow and damp, its walls lined with exposed pipes that dripped condensation onto the concrete floor. The air was heavy, the faint hum of machinery growing louder as they progressed. Olivia's grip on her rifle tightened, her senses heightened as every shadow and echo took on new menace. They reached an intersection where the tunnel split into two paths. Reynolds checked the small tactical display strapped to his wrist. "Left," he murmured. "Lead straight to the server room." Olivia nodded, her voice a low command. "Stay sharp." Clayborn didn't build this place without contingencies. The corridor widened as they approached their target, the harsh glow of fluorescent lights illuminating a reinforced steel door at the end. Bancroft stepped forward, producing a small device from his pack. "EMP charge," he explained. "It'll knock out the lock, but we'll need to move fast before the backup power kicks in." Olivia and Reynolds took up defensive positions, their weapons trained on the hallway behind them. Bancroft placed the charge on the panel and stepped back. A low whine filled the air, followed by a soft pop as the device discharged. The door hissed open, revealing the server room beyond. The room was a stark contrast to the utilitarian tunnels. A pristine chamber filled with rows of humming servers, their blinking lights casting an eerie glow. At the center stood the primary terminal, a sleek console that seemed almost out of place in its sterility. Reynolds moved to the terminal, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm in," he announced, his voice taut with concentration. "Downloading now." Olivia and Bancroft held their positions, their eyes scanning the room for potential threats. The seconds dragged, each one a reminder of how exposed they were. A sudden clatter echoed from the corridor, followed by the measured stomp of approaching boots. Bancroft glanced at Olivia. "We've got company." "How much longer?" Olivia called to Reynolds, her tone urgent. 90 seconds, he replied. "Working as fast as I can." Olivia cursed under her breath, signaling Bancroft to take cover behind one of the server racks. The first enemy soldier appeared in the doorway, his weapon raised. Olivia didn't hesitate, firing a controlled burst that dropped him instantly. More followed, their movements precise and coordinated. The firefight was brutal and unrelenting. Olivia and Bancroft used the server racks as cover, their return fire calculated to buy Reynolds the time he needed. Bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces, the deafening noise amplified in the enclosed space. Olivia felt a sharp sting as a round grazed her arm, but she gritted her teeth and pressed on. 30 seconds, Reynolds shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "We don't have 30 seconds, Bancroft retorted, downing another assailant before ducking back behind cover. The room grew thick with smoke as one of the attackers tossed a flashbang. Olivia turned away just in time, her vision spared from the blinding blast. She fired blindly into the haze, her instincts honed by years of combat. "Got it!" Reynolds exclaimed, pulling a portable drive from the terminal. "We're good to go." Olivia knew they couldn't hold the room any longer. "Fall back," she ordered, her voice cutting through the din. "Bancroft, lay suppressive fire!" The three operatives moved as one, retreating down the corridor they had come from. Bancroft unleashed a relentless barrage, forcing the remaining attackers to take cover. Olivia took the rear, her weapon trained on the advancing figures. They emerged from the tunnels into the cool night air, their breaths ragged and their movements hurried. The facility behind them was alive with alarms, its red strobe lights casting eerie patterns against the forest. "Extraction point's 2 clicks southeast," Bancroft said, his rifle still raised as they moved. "We need to double time it." As they pushed through the dense undergrowth, the hum of helicopter blades grew louder. Olivia glanced skyward, her jaw tightening as she spotted the silhouette of an approaching chopper. Its searchlight cut through the trees, sweeping dangerously close to their position. "They're not giving up," Reynolds muttered, his expression grim. Olivia's response was matter-of-fact. "Neither are we." They reached a small clearing where their escape vehicle, a camouflaged Jeep, was concealed beneath a tarp. Bancroft climbed into the driver's seat, gunning the engine as Olivia and Reynolds jumped in. The Jeep roared to life, tearing through the forest as the helicopter gave chase. Bullets tore through the air around them, the chopper's gunner firing relentlessly. Olivia returned fire with her rifle, her shots precise despite the bouncing terrain. Reynolds leaned out the side, tossing a smoke grenade to obscure their path. The Jeep skidded onto a dirt road, its tires kicking up a cloud of dust. The helicopter's searchlight wavered, momentarily losing them in the haze. Olivia didn't waste the opportunity, aiming for the chopper's rotor assembly. Her shot struck true, and the aircraft lurched violently, its pilot struggling to maintain control. "Nice shot," Bancroft called over his shoulder. "Not done yet," Olivia replied, her focus unwavering. The chopper veered off course, smoke trailing from its damaged rotor. It wasn't a kill, but it bought them enough time to reach the extraction point. As the Jeep screeched to a halt, they were met by a team of allies, members of an underground network Olivia had cultivated over the years. "You have the data?" one of them asked, urgency in her voice. Reynolds handed over the drive. "Every piece of it." The woman nodded. "Good, we'll broadcast it within the hour." Olivia knew the battle wasn't over, but in this moment, they had struck a decisive blow. As the first rays of dawn pierced the horizon, she felt a flicker of hope. The system was corrupt, but it was not invincible, and she would see it fall, no matter the cost. Recap: Olivia, Bancroft, and Reynolds infiltrate Clayborn's facility, retrieve the incriminating data, and escape under fire. Though pursued to the extraction point, their mission succeeds, setting the stage for the final reckoning against corruption.